Hi, I'm Anne Mezzenga, and welcome to Retail Field Report's People of Retail series. Today, I have the pleasure of welcoming Target's Senior Director of Investor Relations, Justin Madsen. Justin, huge fan. So excited to get to talk to you. We were introduced by a very close mutual friend and former Target colleague, and when she introduced me to you, I could not wait to like tell your story much more broadly. So thank you so much for making the time to be here today.
That is very kind, and thank you so much for having me. I'm looking forward to the conversation today.
Well, okay, before we get into that though, I ask all my guests on the show, what did you do before you came to work this morning?
There's a little bit of chaos in the Madsen household. We unexpectedly moved recently. And so basically every morning before my boys get up, I have a 5-year-old son and a 2-year-old son. And every night after they go to bed, I try to challenge myself to unpack a few boxes, organize a few things. So I was at it dark and early this morning, trying to put a few more things away in the kitchen.
I moved a lot growing up as a kid, and my mom's philosophy was always just one box a day. Like if you can just get to one box a day, you like anything, right? You slowly chip away at the problem.
Chip away at it. You got it.
And then there's just boxes in the corner that just get left there an indefinite amount of time.
And they'll never get unpacked, and that's fine too. Yeah, exactly.
Well, Justin, I want to have you explain a little bit about what being the Senior Director of Investor Relations at a big company like Target looks like. Like, what do you oversee in your role?
When some people, start to conjure up images of investor relations, like maybe at their worst, they think of IR as the spin masters, right? They're just trying to tell a story. They're trying to paint things with rose-colored glasses. And I think it's almost the opposite of that. Like, I view myself as being in the credibility business. My job is anybody who has a question about our financial results, our strategies, where we're going as a company, they come to my team, and our job is to help them better understand our story, how we differentiate from our competitors, and even just, spending a little bit of time to just help unpack, where we want to go and what messages, we want them to leave understanding. But all of that rooted in, I want to be honest, I want to be forthright, and I want to make sure that, they know that when they're talking to me, they're getting, credibility and that integrity that builds that long-lasting relationship.
How do you prepare for a role like that? Like, what did you do before this job that kind of trained you for that, so that you're taking the very important messages for this company and preparing them in a digestible and a good way, way to represent the company?
I've been at Target now for 13 and a half years. And so I certainly dwell and lean on every single one of the experiences that I've had up until this point, whether it be accounting roles, financial planning and analysis roles, all sorts of different project-based roles. Like, those have all just added tools to the shed to help me feel a little bit more credible about the broader Target ecosystem and how I might talk about it. When I was in undergrad, maybe this is a slight, aside, Anne, but
we're here for the asides. We're here for the tangents.
Yes, you gave me permission. So, I was actually a double major in accounting and theater and dance, as most people are. And so, yeah, exactly. So, I won't get into all the details of how I got there, but it's funny because I actually had no intention of majoring in theater. I've always done theater as a hobby. It's something that I love. In fact, I met my wife in a community theater show. So theater is very important to us. It was actually an accounting professor that talked me into majoring in it. And when I said, I don't understand, I have zero desire to make this my career. Why would I spend that much time doing that?
Yeah.
He said, I guarantee there will be a point in your career when you will realize all of the theater applications in a corporate setting. You can think on your feet when things go wrong. You know the importance of storytelling. You can get up in front of a group of people and present effectively. You know the importance of teamwork. And just kept going on. And it was sort of one of those wow, that was really insightful. And so he convinced me to double major in theater. And again, I sort of was like, if nothing else, it'll make for an interesting story in a job interview, but I don't actually know how I'm going to use this. Well, fast forward, and a lot of my day is writing scripts for the leadership team, or telling stories, or speaking in front of groups of people. And so it's amazing how much I actually dwell on some of those soft skills that I learned as a theater person, in what would otherwise be sort of a quote unquote traditional, more like finance type job.
Yeah. Wow. There's so much to unpack there. But it's so interesting. And I think it's hugely helpful, right? Especially for the younger audience members out there who are,
Yeah,
have their degrees and are like, what do I do with myself? Like, how do I figure out how to apply these skills to a career, especially in business or in retail in this case? So I love how you explain it as kind of like getting to learn the cast at a large corporation. Do
absolutely.
you, yeah, do you like, how do you think about then like working with the executives that you're writing for? Like, do you kind of have to get to know them on a personal level more? I mean, like you're writing for them. So how do you like encapsulate their energy or that, and then alongside the messaging of the company that you're kind of trying to get out there?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it always starts with what is the story that you want to tell, and what are the like
Mhm.
proof or the things that you think are either underappreciated or maybe just like need a little bit more airtime, and building the
Yeah.
narrative around that. And then from there, you're exactly right. One leader is not going to sound the same as the other. And so I do
Yeah.
my best to try and capture their voice and make it feel authentic for them. But I'm very, very fortunate to work for leaders that come with a really strong point of view. They come with just incredible experience and expertise and instincts. And so there is definitely an iterative process of me saying like, I'll open the bidding at, these sets of remarks, and they come back and say, I think we need to talk about this. Or, it's funny.
Yeah.
I can think of a leader that I used to support in a former life who said, like, hey, Justin, like, I really like to be plain spoken. And so like,
Yeah.
you've got some really expensive words in here, and like, I'd rather just like simplify them. So it was like, great,
Yeah.
going forward, I know that I can just try to keep it a little bit more plain spoken. And so I think it's sort of an overtime, it's sort of like any role where as you build
Yeah.
that relationship with key stakeholders, whether they be internal or external, you understand what makes them tick more, you understand what's important to them, and then you can help reflect that in the conversation.
Well, I'm wondering, Justin, like you've had a big year. Target is really making a big comeback or turnaround. We've got new leadership in place. What do you think is the biggest work opportunity in front of you right now in your role? Like, what are you excited about? How are you thinking differently about like tools you might be using to tell the stories, or even like as investor relations and broadcasting on behalf of a company starts to change and look different? Like you're on LinkedIn, you're doing corporate based events. Like, how are you thinking
Yeah.
about all you have in front of you right now, and what gets you really excited?
I think in some ways, the way that you ask the question is what I'm excited about. Like, retail is
Okay.
always changing. It is
Yeah.
so fast paced. And so like, I love that I know that no 2 days are going to look the same. And there's always that
Sure.
excitement of like, what's next, what's around the corner. In terms of, like big opportunities, I'm excited that it feels like, to your point, there's a lot of momentum in the business right now. And it's really exciting and encouraging to talk about how we are writing this next chapter for Target. And that is
Yeah.
a new chapter of growth. It's about thinking differently about what our role is in American retail. It's thinking about how we differentiate from some of our competitors. And ultimately, it's about like, how do we be the best version of ourselves? And while there are others that are, far smarter than I am, they're going to be responsible for the actual strategy and actually deploying things. I love that I get to have a hand in crafting that story and helping to evangelize all of the great work and the exciting thought leadership that's happening at Target right now.
I can only imagine, Justin. What does it look like then? Like, what teams are you involved with, and how embedded do you get within the organization, like as they're testing new things? Because I imagine it's not just okay, here are the bullets for this next call, let's get them all organized. Like, I imagine you're talking to almost like a journalist, where you're going in and you're really gathering bits of data throughout the life cycle of a quarter. Is that the case? Are you talking to and engaging with the leaders of those each vertical within Target?
Yeah, I am. And, I think, arguably that might be the part of this function that I love the most is that,
Okay, tell me more.
so within the investor relations space, I tell people that, we speak with a broad set of external stakeholders, and
Okay.
there is a wide acknowledgement that we can't be the subject matter experts of every detail of the entire company. Like, we're a company
Right.
of over 400,000 employees. So there's no way for me to know everything that every one of them knows. And yet they expect me to be able to go pretty deep on most topics. And so
Yeah.
it's both daunting and exciting for somebody who's insatiably curious. And so like, that's something that I think that keeps me motivated in this space. But one of the things that I love is because I can't be that subject matter expert, I have to rely on the expertise throughout every function of this organization. And so I am just humbled on a daily basis by the depth of experience, expertise, creativity, insight, instinct, strategy that I get to be a part of. And to your point, I also love that there's a push and pull relationship. A lot of this is, I'm trying to make sure that we're putting our best foot forward in terms of a story. So help me understand, what are the new initiatives that we're going after? What are some of the things that are driving our performance? And doing a little bit of that fact finding, or more of that like journalism mentality that you described. But then there's also an element of people saying like, hey, we're thinking about dabbling in X, Y, and Z. And then it's fun for me to be able to say, here's what I think an external reaction is going to be to that. And does that give us growing confidence that we should go down this path? Or does that maybe give us a reason to pause and step back and say, would we want to augment this messaging to make sure that it has the full impact that we know that it should?
Tell me about like how you're interacting with the outside investor perspective, and then how you kind of marry that with the information that you have internally.
We in investor relations are, spokespeople for the company. And so there's a lot of relationship building that happens with those investors, potential investors, analysts, whoever it is that we're speaking with. But then, they're not only investors, and they're not only analysts, and they're not only reporters, they're also people that shop at Target. And so as they're sharing their individual experiences, I tried this product for the first time and I absolutely loved it. I went into this store and I was excited about this. Or, conversely, like I ordered this and, the order didn't come through exactly as I expected, or whatever the case may be. Those are additional data points that I can then feed to the relevant teams and say, this one might be anecdote, or these are some themes that I hear coming up.
We're coming up now on two of the biggest quarters of the year.
Yes.
As you and your small but mighty team are preparing for that, what is kind of number one on your list of priorities right now?
For me, it is going to be that balance of the conviction that we have on our clarified strategy, the opportunities ahead of us, the momentum that we're building, and just how excited we are about writing this next chapter for the company. And then always quickly following that with, and there's a lot of work to be done. And that can sound intimidating, and that can sound scary, or it can sound really motivating. And I will tell you that internally at this company, people are fired up. They want to go, they want to win, they want to like get out there and put our best foot forward. And so there's a real special energy and momentum and vibe that's happening right now. And so I love my role in getting to help sort of like stoke those flames, and also to just help continue to broadcast, all that is coming and all that we're excited about, for the foreseeable future and beyond.
Is there something they've been asking you for that you're like, okay, this is our time to really like answer that question, or like come back with kind of what we've become or what's in our plans, as you were just alluding to?
I feel like we are really just owning our own like swim lane, or our own path forward. We have sort of said, the best thing that we can do is be the best version of ourselves, not constantly looking to our left and to our right to see what others are doing. Now, of course, we're going to watch the industry very carefully. Again, retail changes quickly. It's very competitive, but I think there's real power in knowing who you are and what you're trying to do, and then having the clarity, the conviction, and the courage to run whole hog after that.
Yeah. And it sounds like, you've got a team internally that's ready to do that, and it's excited about this. And there's a lot of alignment on, what the next few months and holiday season look like there too, which is great, especially being here in Minneapolis. I mean, could not be more excited for what's to come, and for this new version of Target, as it's such a core component to our city. Justin, I'm curious, as you're thinking about, looking back on some of our conversations so far today, when you think about telling people who are new in their careers, they're just kind of coming into the retail industry. They just learned from this conversation that an industry, investor relations position is a thing.
Yeah.
And you can make your way to it through a degree in accounting and theater. What kind of advice would you give to them as they're thinking about like, where can I go? What are my possibilities? And what should I really be focused on as a young person right now, if I want to see a long-term career in the retail industry?
Yeah, I love that question. And I think what comes to mind is almost agnostic of whatever industry you're in. The first advice that I like always try to give people is be hungry and be humble. Like, you don't have to know everything today. You should admit that you don't know everything today, but as long as you're smarter tomorrow than you were today, you're probably doing something right. So like, just stay hungry, keep learning, and just admit that there's always room to grow, always room to develop, always room to ask more questions. Like, that's just like table stakes to me. So I think that's probably one. And then the other is, I think, again, regardless of industry, I think sometimes in just like a broader corporate setting, we can sometimes fall into the trap of like, what are you good at and what are your opportunities? And there is some real value there. So I don't want to completely throw the baby out with the bathwater.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of things that I might be good at that I don't necessarily like doing. And there might be things that like I'm not great at today, but I want to work towards those. And maybe I do want to get good at those. And so I try to flip that and ask people like, what gives you energy and what drains you of energy? And if you can identify like, these are the things that make me jump out of bed in the morning for my job versus like having that Sunday night moment of like, oh goodness gracious, like tomorrow's Monday and I have to go into work. If you can identify what those things are that make you spring out of bed, run towards those opportunities.
Okay, Justin, I have to push you a little bit on one of those things.
Yeah.
You're talking, I love being humble and being a hustler, being curious. Is it hard to be humble when you're in your role and to like, I feel like it's, when I think of investor relations, I just think of like analysts that are like so to the point and quick and fast and like you have to be like bulletproof. Can you still do both of those things?
Yeah, absolutely. I think two things can be true at once, right? Confidence and humility don't have to be mutually exclusive. I am confident in the company that I get the privilege of standing in front of to talk about. I am confident in the direction that we're going. I'm confident in having an understanding of how we differentiate from others and how I can share that, with the broader external community. And yet I can also be humble enough to say that there's a lot of work in front of us. I can be humble enough to admit when I don't know the answers to some questions. And again, but that's not where the conversation should stop. As I realize that there are things that I could know more about or gain confidence in, then that's on me to go seek those opportunities out to get even sharper there.
Justin, amazing. I'm so thankful for the time. I want to close with this question, and that is, what moment last made you jump out of bed excited and happy to go to work on a Monday?
Oh man, that's a good question. I think we were planning a really big event at Target recently, and I got to have a pretty front row seat to a lot of the plans that we were making. And as it was all coming together, and I was sort of like thinking back over the weekend, I'm like, all right, we need to do this. Check, we did it. We need to do this. Check, we did it. And I realized that like pretty soon it was about to be that moment where you sort of get to see the fruits of your labor and not just all of the minutia of like trying to plan for it. I was really excited because I was like, I feel like we've got a great story to tell. I feel like the leaders are prepared. They're on fire. They're excited to share. And so it was one of those, like, now like, just let's do it. Like we've talked about it. We've planned for it. Let's go.
Justin Madsen, you are incredible. Thank you so much for sharing your role, your experience, and some of the new exciting things happening at Target with all of us. If there's someone you would like to see featured in our People of Retail Field Report, please let me know. Shoot me a direct message. And until next time, stay curious.